You have to have that work connection, right? So if you don't have a business in Portugal, if you don't have a company, if you're not working in a company, if you're not on the board of a company, then you wouldn't have it.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Nations Without Borders. My name is Eric Nation, and on today's video, we're going to be tackling a huge topic for anyone considering moving to Portugal, and that is taxes. For years, Portugal's non-habitual resident, or NHR tax regime, was a huge draw for expats and immigrants alike, coming from all over the world. But as you saw in that intro clip, things have definitely changed in the year 2025. The original NHR is gone, replaced by its successor, NHR 2.0, aka IFICI, which is an acronym that has a lot of technical Portuguese words that I can't pronounce correctly. So we'll just use the English acronym, which is TISRI, which stands for Tax Incentive for Scientific Research and Innovation. And to understand what this really means for you, we brought in an expert. We are incredibly fortunate to have with us here today Zeev Fisher from Fresh Portugal. He's going to break down everything you need to know about NHR 2.0. So let's dive into the interview and get the real story on Portugal's new tax regime, NHR 2.0, aka TISRI. Let's go. So we're here at Fresh Portugal's office with Zeev Fisher. Thank you, Zeev, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Can you tell our audience and our viewers just a little bit more about Fresh Portugal and what services you guys offer?
So Fresh Portugal is an expat law firm. All we do is expat work, help people move to Portugal. Tax is our kind of biggest department. We also do real estate, immigration, estate planning, everything that has to do with settling and settling in Portugal.
Cool. Awesome. Let's jump into it. We're talking about NHR 2.0, aka TISRI today. And let's just start off with the questions for our audience and viewers. Can you tell us a little bit more about NHR 2.0?
Sure. So the NHR scheme, the previous one, was one of the most successful tax schemes perhaps ever to be created in attracting foreign talent, people with savings, with income to come to Portugal. But the original intention was to get people to come to Portugal and spend their money in Portugal. And it created certain issues or certain problems in the market. And there's been some pushback from a lot of people living in Portugal, seeing people coming in with salaries that are imaginable for them. And there's been some suggestion that real estate prices and generally there's been inflation which was blamed on expats, and the previous government reacted to that by cancelling that scheme. But then there's been a political pushback saying, oh, hold on a minute, we do want some people to come to Portugal, we still want people to be welcome, but we want them to contribute to the actual economy, and that's how TISRI or NHR 2.0 has been born. So the main difference between the two is that in the new scheme, you have to participate more actively in the local economy. The benefits are very similar. They're not the same, but they're very similar. So the same idea, but trying to fix the issues with the previous scheme. And it's actually a really good scheme. I think people don't know it very well yet, but we expect it to be just as successful as the previous one.
So TISRI is like a brand new tax scheme. Is it actually into effect right now? Have they already launched it?
Yeah, so it's actually been in the law book for about a year now. It hasn't been regulated, although in theory it's there. It wasn't possible to apply for it, but because applications are retroactive, they always knew that, okay, if they introduce it in the right time, it would still be relevant, even for people who came to Portugal in 2024. Also, there was a transitional period for the NHR, so a lot of people could still fall into the previous scheme when they came last year. So it wasn't that relevant.
Gotcha.
But the scheme is in the law book. It was always, ever since it started, it was possible to sort of apply manually. So there was like no proper form to apply, but you could still submit a paper application. Okay. So yes, it's active, and now these days actually everything is being completed so that you can apply online. Okay. We expect the online application form, which is the last thing that's still missing, we actually expect it to come this week.
Oh, nice, cool. So that's going to be coming soon.
But yeah, it works. Yeah.
Awesome. And then for our viewers, who a lot of them are probably familiar with NHR 1.0, the original, what are some of the main differences between the new TISRI and NHR original?
So the differences are first who can get into the scheme. With NHR, it's simply ticking a box and confirming that you haven't been living in Portugal in the last 5 years, haven't been a tax resident in Portugal in the last 5 years, and that's it. With TISRI, you have to have some sort of a work connection to Portugal. There's a list of relevant work connections. Perhaps the best one or the easiest one is the startup route. If you're either employed or on the board of a certified startup company, but there are other ones. You can have an export-driven company, which can be export of services.
Export of services.
Yeah. So if you offer services to overseas clients, that might be enough.
Okay.
And then there's an even more generic one. But each program is slightly different in the requirements. But generally, almost anyone that's working from Portugal and has some work connection from Portugal, there is a route for them. And even if you don't work from Portugal, being on a board of a startup is pretty general.
Yeah.
So if you can get yourself on a board of a startup, and you can either add a lot of value to an existing certified startup by your network, by your skills, or by your capital. So it could be through an investment as well. So basically, there is a route for everyone to the new scheme. That's one difference. How you get in. And then the actual benefits are almost the same, generally 20% on income that you generate in Portugal from work, and an exemption on profits from a foreign source. The main big differences that capital gains are now clearly included. In the past, they were only included for Americans, capital gains from securities. And now they're included for everyone. So that's huge opportunity for startup founders, for example, that are anticipating an exit.
Yeah.
If you're working on your startup and you may sell it next year, you will not pay capital gains taxes if you live in Portugal. So a huge demographic that previously wasn't included unless they were American.
Yeah.
And the main downside is, or maybe not downside, depends on how you look at it, is that the pensioners are out.
Yeah.
So pension income is now excluded, and it's taxed under the normal rates.
Yep.
But what is pension is the big question, because pension in Portugal doesn't match
pension in America.
Pension in America, for example, and not everything that you think is pension, and not everything that you think is not pension is not pension.
Yeah, like in the United States, is a 401k a traditional pension or not, or?
So I mean, our view is that 401k is a pension in the eyes of the Portuguese tax person, but there's like a micro analysis to that as well. So lump sum payments may be different from regular payments. So sometimes you have to sort of drill into that as well. But yeah, generally people coming to retire in Portugal will get a way less good deal.
And under NHR 1.0, that it was under at least recent years, it was 10%?
It was 10%, and before that it was 0%.
Yeah.
And that's intentional. So there was a lot of criticism. So people come to retire in Portugal, they benefit from a much lower tax rate, but they still use the healthcare system. And a lot of the pushback was on this. So essentially saying, if people want to come and retire here, they're very welcome. All the visas are in place. It's still very easy to come, but they need to pay tax like locals. And obviously, with different rates of income, that can be quite.
Gotcha.
That can be quite a lot. But then, if people come with pension income, for example, and they rely on regular saving accounts, they can still get the exemption on capital gains for 10 years.
Okay.
So it's just a retirement account that they're suffering.
Okay.
So if they can, for example, get themselves on a board of a startup, they can still get some exemption. So really rich people are not that affected by that.
Yeah. And luckily, at least Lisbon in Portugal is like a tech hub for startups. There's lots of startups. So that's good.
Yeah, and we're actually starting a video series to expose those startups to people that may, perhaps up until now had no particular interest or incentive to know more about the local startup community, but now with driven kind of on the back of this tax benefit, and we've always wanted to get expats more involved in the local industry.
Yeah.
We always thought it's good reputationally, it's a good narrative. We want to show that expats are contributing to the real economy. Now there's a hard incentive to do that as well. So we will be releasing videos with basically startup founders telling their stories.
That's awesome. We'll be on the lookout for that.
Cool.
And then I guess one more difference I wanted to bring up to clarify just for myself, but also the viewers, is that I guess in NHR 1.0, you could qualify for working for a foreign entity. But under TISRI, am I correct to say that you now have to be involved in a local Portuguese entity?
You can do both.
You can do both.
Yeah.
But to qualify, does it have to be a Portuguese entity?
To qualify, it has to be a Portuguese entity, but you don't have to do everything you do through a Portuguese entity.
Okay.
So if your income is $1 million a year, and your activity in Portugal is 20,000 euros a year, that's still okay.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, so let's move on to the next question. I guess this could be beneficial for both parties, but what are some of the main benefits of the new tax program TISRI, like for Portugal and for the expats?
So for Portugal, now, as opposed to the previous scheme, and I think the previous scheme really failed in one thing. I mean, yes, people came to Portugal and spent their money in Portugal, but expats generally in Portugal live a completely isolated life. You wake up, you work on your laptop in your foreign job, you don't engage, or a lot of people don't engage with anything that's actually happening in Portugal.
Yeah.
And that's not just commercially, it's also socially a huge problem. A lot of people leave because of that, because they never really put down roots. And with TISRI now you have to play. You have to participate in the general economy. You have to do something. So, and we see that the reaction to that is fantastic, actually. People want to be involved. They just don't, they had no reason or incentive or framework to make it happen. It's, when I came here, I mean, I wasn't always living here. When I came here, I invested in a local angels club because I wanted to bring some of my expertise into Portugal, and I'm very happy that I've done that. And sure, I mean, meeting locals and learning the language is very important, but it's participating with the actual economy is even more important.
Yeah.
And I think now it's going to happen. And everyone is very excited. Everyone in the Portuguese ecosystem is very excited about this.
That's cool.
The funds, the incubators, the Startup Portugal themselves, everyone who's in the ecosystem is now saying, oh, okay, there's going to be this wave of expat interest, hopefully capital as well.
Yeah,
and this is just a pure win-win. It's great for everyone. That's for Portugal. Yeah, for the expats, it's both the tax benefits, which I think we know very well that they can be a major enabler sometimes. For a lot of people, it's just a no-go without the tax benefits. But also being part of, you don't just live here because it's a nice place. You live here and you participate and you take part, and you help something local grow, and you connect with local people. Great stuff.
Cool. Awesome. All right, next question. For people that are looking up the differences between them, how is TISRI or NHR 2.0 better or worse than the original program?
The big boon is capital gains exemption. So for Americans, because of how the NHR was structured and because the US has citizenship-based taxation, for Americans there is actually no new benefit. The NHR 1.0 was just as good, but for everyone else, because securities are now out of the scope of tax, it's great. I mean, it's founders and generally people that run businesses anywhere in the world except for, well, in the US as well, it's just not new, but anywhere in the world they can come to Portugal, set up subsidiary and enjoy capital gains free exits. I think should and will bring very good people to Portugal.
Nice.
That's the big benefit.
And for anyone doing their homework that knew they could probably qualify for NHR 1.0, what people would be excluded from qualifying from the new program?
So you have to have that work connection, right? So if you don't have a business in Portugal, if you don't have a company, if you're not working in a company, if you're not on the board of a company, then you wouldn't have it. Okay. So you have to do one of those.
So it's harder to qualify for, it's more niche, but if you do and it works out, then that's great.
It's harder to qualify. It's not that niche because it's not that difficult to generate that work connection, but it's more niche in the sense that you need to do something. You don't just tick a box. So yeah, 50% of the people will probably be out and won't even try. But I think much of that is just because people don't know that there are so many routes in, and as the scheme becomes more well known, and as it works more smoothly, I think more people will realize that it actually can work for them.
Cool. For someone who does want to apply, what are the different eligibility requirements and paths they could take to qualify?
Startup route is the big one. So working or on the board of a certified startup.
Certified startup is the important part.
So certified startup means certified by Startup Portugal. Yeah, I mean, we go into, okay, how do you get a startup certified? Different routes again. I mean, it's not that hard.
Okay.
Every startup that received an investment from a Portuguese fund is eligible.
Okay.
Or from a certified angel, again certified. And the certification doesn't work yet, but it will soon. But also, there's also a direct route to certification through an entity called ANI, the National Innovation Agency, and also not that hard. So, I mean, it's bureaucracy. Portugal's great in creating bureaucracy, but if you go through the motions, if it's your company, you can get it certified.
Okay.
If it's someone else's company, there is a rush now to certify companies.
Okay, gotcha.
There have been, I think like last time we looked, about 30% of the certified startups in Portugal have been certified in January 2025.
Oh wow, okay.
Because everyone's rushing to certify their companies now. So not hard.
Okay, so certified startup, and then earlier you mentioned export.
So a company who's exporting more than 50% of its turnover, and it could be services.
Okay.
So if you offer services to people overseas, that works.
Okay.
And if you're not in the export space, there's an array of other options as well.
So if like 50% of your clients or revenue is coming from
abroad,
overseas.
Yeah. So that's easy. You also need to have a profession that qualifies, but the managing director of your own company is a profession that qualifies. It's not hard.
And so TISRI is the English translation of the acronym, which stands for
Tax Incentive for Science Research and Innovation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other acronym is IFICI, IFICI. CI. And then, so in terms of like the different, someone could be like a researcher or a teacher, and could they qualify through that path as well?
So that's another path. Yeah. So there are specific paths for specific professions. Teachers in university, not any teacher.
Okay.
So there are specific professions, and I haven't mentioned them because they're quite narrow.
Okay.
But in addition to the specific professions, there's the more general pools.
Okay.
So yeah, there is a path for most people.
And I think for our audience, which is mostly like digital nomads and international traveling families, often these people are like in the high-tech startups or software engineer or whatever the case may be.
So these are professions that are eligible.
Awesome.
So if you work for a local company and you're as an IT engineer, that qualifies. If you don't work for a local company and you set up a local company, that should qualify as well.
Awesome. Well, I think we've covered a lot of the information. I think what would be helpful now for our viewers is to give some examples or different scenarios of like use cases where people could apply and how that might impact their tax situation, what have you.
Sure. So I think two very interesting ones. One I already mentioned, but we can't stress it out enough. If you're in the UK or Germany or Sweden running your tech startup now with 50 employees, you're scaling, you're growing, you're doing really well. Setting up a subsidiary in Portugal is a fantastic option because you have great local talent here. It's a great place to come. A lot of people already have people that are working from Portugal. But also if you think about exit planning and you're going to sell your company, the UK is a great example because capital gains tax has just been brought up from initially 10% on the first 10 million, then 10% on the first 1 million, and 20% on the rest, and now it's just 24% on everything.
Oh wow!
That's kicking in. So if you could take a significant amount of your exit money at 10% up until 2 years ago, now it's 24%.
Oh wow!
If you set up a subsidiary in Portugal and you exit your UK company, it's zero. Still no exit tax in the UK, so you can still do that. Yeah, multiple other countries. So if you're a founder, hopefully that will give a good boost to the Portuguese economy. Oh, and by the way, I mean, I think another thing that unrelated to IFICI at all, but people should know about that. There's a lot of late stage money in Portugal. Okay. Also the result of a specific tax benefit that's now been discontinued, but there are funds sitting on money called CFID funds.
Okay.
And that's late stage, very significant amounts. There's about €1 billion plus of CFID fund money waiting to be invested in late stage deep tech companies. So if you have a late stage deep tech company with revenue, you can access that pool of money. That's in addition to the tax benefits. So Portugal's made itself now a great place for tech founders to come to. Mm-hmm. And then another, I think, very relevant profile is that the very successful digital nomad doing say an e-commerce business, and the e-commerce business is doing really well, and you can structure it with IFICI such that you will pay no tax. Okay. You will have some involvement in Portugal, so it could be, for example, through the startup board position route. Okay. But you set up your own business overseas and run it from overseas. Okay. So Portugal was always doing that, but even more so now with IFICI or TISRI because of the capital gains tax. Mm-hmm. So if before you could take dividends or capital distributions tax-free, now you can also sell the business. Amazing. And take the proceeds tax-free. So I think Portugal stays really, really attractive to these demographics. And, yeah.
Nice. And then like if a family's looking to come over and there's a married couple, is it joint or each spouse would have to apply for it on their own?
So each spouse has to apply on their own if you want the exemption for both. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a bit of hoops to jump through. Mm-hmm. If they don't want to do that, you can structure the income such that you're passing it through one spouse. So yeah, I mean, we always look for the optimal.
Awesome. Well, I think we covered a lot of the questions that I had and probably what our audience has. So I appreciate your time, Zeev.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. And for anyone that is interested in applying in NHR 2.0 or TISRI, definitely go to freshportugal.com, I believe is the website. Yeah. They have multiple services for immigration, tax consultation, whatever, and helping you apply for TISRI. So make sure you check Zeev and his team out on freshportugal.com.
Cool. Thank you.
See you next time. All right, welcome back. So as you heard from Zeev, the tax landscape in Portugal has definitely changed with NHR 2.0. With NHR 1.0, there were unintended consequences that had negative impacts to the local Portuguese economy and housing markets. But with NHR 2.0, the new design and goals of this tax regime aim to alleviate those negative impacts. With a new focus on strong incentives to integrate and contribute to the local Portuguese economy, we are hopeful that this new tax regime will have more lasting positive effects. So, Portugal is still a smart move for tax reasons? Well, that all depends. For some people, especially if you're in one of those targeted professions, it absolutely is. But it's crucial to understand if you qualify for TISRI. All right, well that about wraps it up for this week's episode on Nations Without Borders. If you stuck with us to the end, thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you for watching. And if you haven't already, and if you appreciated this video, please do us a favor and like the video, hit the thumbs up button, and also subscribe to the channel. We would definitely appreciate it, and that helps us continue making more videos like this one, educating families that are thinking about relocating to Portugal. And if you have questions or anything, or any questions for Zeev at Fresh Portugal, ask a question in the comments below and we'll be happy to respond. Well, that's it for now. So thank you, adios, ciao, and we'll see you next week. Bye.